Hey, thank you for joining me today. My name is Tiffany. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about finding your first job in tech. Finding your first coding job. How difficult it is to find it. What you should do. We'll chit chat about some of that. Yeah. So I got a list because, of course, duh. I can't remember everything. So I got a list. So I'll be looking down periodically. That's what I'm doing, looking at this list. So I wrote down some things that I feel like could be helpful and some things you're probably not going to like, but you know, I wrote them down anyway because I didn't like them, but I had to do them either way. This is coming off my last video. So about how to prepare to find a job. Watch that one first and then jump back over here and figure out how you're going to find that job, right? That's going to help you. All right, so with that being said, watch the last video, make sure your resume is on point. Look at that and you'll know what I mean, okay? Now, the next thing is use Twitter and LinkedIn and things like that, Stack Overflow, stuff like that, to interact with other developers. Now, I know what you're thinking. How's this going to help me find a job, Tiffany? Well, I'll tell you, right? It's not just about like who you know in your own city or your own state even. It's about interacting with others, right? I used to do it a lot when I was just starting out and I just got out of a coding boot camp and I was like, all right, I'm going to conquer the world. I participated in what's called the #CodeNewbie Twitter chat. And to be honest with you, it was more uplifting more than anything. And some of you like, I don't need motivation. Nonsense. Everybody needs motivation time to time. But what it does for you is it lets you interact with people that are on your level, right? And so then you're not feeling like, oh, I'm totally alone and I'm stupid. No, you're not stupid. You're not totally alone. There's other people like you out there that are trying to do the same thing. Now, I recommend doing that whether you are a part of a coding bootcamp cohort or whether you're just self-taught or whatever the case may be for you, right? Interact with other developers online. With that being said, that was just one example, and I recommend to like search, not really vigorously search, but as you're reading articles and as you're, because you should be reading articles and things like that about development and about others that are doing development others that are developers, like senior developers and things like that. I recommend a lot of them. Look, they'll leave their Twitter or whatever, or say, contact me this kind of way. And take advantage of that, right? They're not saying it just because it's the right thing to do. They really want you to help out. I mean, they really want to help you out. So take advantage of it. Be like, hey, let me ask you a question about this. And I know it's like, well, what am I going to find questions to ask about? If you're spending enough time coding, there's always a question that you need answered. So I say go out and try it. What's the worst that could happen? They don't answer. That's probably the worst that could happen. And if that's the case, it's fine. None of them are going to answer negatively. I could almost say that. 99% sure that they're not going to answer negatively. A lot of them, if they don't want to help you, they're just not going to help you, right? And that's the worst thing that could happen. So try it out. Networking. At this point, you should have already been going to meetups, right? You're trying to find that job. You've got everything on point. You watched my last video and you're cool. But now you're like, okay, Tiffany, I really need a job at this point. Look, here's the thing. Network, but again, don't throw in that you're finding a job until you build a rapport with people. I think this was probably the biggest mistake that I made when I was looking for a job, and I mentioned it in my last video. I would be like, hey, I need a job, I need a job, I need a job, right? And that's not good. Make a rapport with people. Connect with people. And talk to people. Slowly build a relationship. Which is why I said before you start finding that job, like if you're at a coding boot camp now and you're just chilling or whatever, you're not chilling, you're working, but when you can, go to meetups and connect with people. And like I said, just talk about code. That's it. Talk about things that you like in coding. You know what I mean? Because later on, I think relationship building is probably the best thing that you could do for yourself. Later on, when you get comfortable enough, you can be like, hey, I am looking for a job. Or if you happen to publicize it and you're already connected with them on LinkedIn or on Twitter or whatever, and they see that, they're like, oh, I can help you out because, hey, I know such and such. We talked over coffee one time, or we talked about this coding problem that you were having. You know what I mean? So I would say build that relationship. And it takes time, right? But you could build a relationship. It depends on you, really. If you take a long time to build with me, I take a long time to build relationships. So it's a little bit tough for me. But if you're a person that can go in and connect with people off the bat, use that to your advantage, because not everybody can do that, right? But either way, I do recommend building that relationship. Understand that it is a job trying to find a job. Like, you cannot kick it to the curb, one day and be like, yeah, I applied to 20 jobs yesterday, so I'm good for today. No. Continue to apply, continue to find things that fit your interests. That's another thing in my last video. Find things that you genuinely like, technologies that you like to work with, and focus your job search on those technologies. That's what you need to be doing. So it's very important to know what you want. And that brings me to my next one. Know what you want. So that comes from the last video I mentioned, by looking at job descriptions and finding out what it is that you want to focus on. It could really help tailor your job search. Okay. The next thing is know what you could settle for. So in the same token of knowing what you want, you got to know what you could settle on. So if you're a person that you're like, look, I know React and Node and all those JavaScript things, and I'm not going to ever get a C++ job, know that about yourself. Know that you're not going to settle on that. That is something that is like embedded. Like, you're not going to get a C++ job. That's not for you, right? Now, if you're another person that's like, hey, I like JavaScript, but if a C++ job comes up and it's a great company, even though I'm not really like keen on the language or whatever, but if they give me a chance, and if I like the company culture, what they're talking about, then I'd give it a chance. Know that about yourself, because there's some things that you're not going to budge on, and there's some things like that you're just not going to move around with, and some things that you're a little bit more lenient with. And keep in mind that these things should not include money. Like, it should not be, well, if this job isn't paying me like $50,000, then I'm not doing it. No, that's not the attitude you need. The things that you won't budge on should have nothing to do with money. They should have everything to do with the technologies that you're doing, the diversity of the company, kind of how their whole culture is, how they onboard people. Those are things that you need to be focusing on. Don't focus on the money, because you can get extra money somewhere else, or you can have this job that you have now and then move on to something else, right? So don't focus on the money aspect of it. Now, definitely have enough money that you can live off of, but don't be like, I need $100,000 as my first job, or I'm not gonna do it. No, because it's kind of unrealistic. It happens for some, but for a majority of us, that's not the case. So know what you're not gonna budge on and be firm on it. Now, I did mention this a little bit before, but keep in mind that developers tend to change jobs more frequently than other industry or other fields. It's okay. So like I said, if you need to take that job because, hey, let's keep it real, you just want the experience, or maybe, you don't have a job. If you did a full-time coding bootcamp, you need one. That's how you're able to build up your resume, right? However, I don't recommend staying for like 3 to 6 months and then saying, okay, you've taught me everything I need to know and I'm moving on. I won't recommend that. Don't do that, but definitely stay for like 1.5 years, 2 years, get your experience and your exposure. And that's also going to give you time to figure out what you like to do and what you don't like to do. So, I would definitely say, do that. Stay on the job and learn as much as you can until you're like, okay, I really want something new, or I really want to change for myself. But do keep in mind, like I said, developers tend to change jobs frequently. So don't be like, oh, I have to stay here because they gave me my first job. No, you have to do what's best for you. You know, be respectful of them, right? But understand that it happens. As developers, we don't tend to stay at the same job for 10 years. That's not something that we really do. So understand that and be okay with that. Anyways, these were all the things I had. I hope it helps. I hope it's helpful. Leave a comment below. If you have questions, reach out to me. That's fine. I don't mind answering them for you. And I thank you for watching, and I'll be back with another one pretty soon. See you guys.